Thanks for joining us on Coast to Coast Pest Talk.
Okay, so now that we're all here, Gabe, how come you're dodging Alex and Sean coming on their show?
Well, we hadn't mentioned it at all several times in every message that we've ever sent about Gabe dodging us. Why is that?
It's the whole UK thing.
Oh my God.
Sean just has to wear an American flag t-shirt. What's up, guys? Thanks so much for tuning in to Coast Pest Talk. I'm your host, Gabe with Pest Patrol, joined here with Andy Snevsky with Primatech Pest Management. And this afternoon / evening, we have a special guest, Sean Mooney, hailing from UK. He is the owner of Kill Line Pest Control, also the co-host of Beauties and Beasties Podcast, and he's also a software guru. He started a pest control software called Pest Software, and so we're gonna jump in and get to know you a bit, Sean.
Well, welcome, Sean, to the U.S. Is this your first? Is this your first U.S. Appearance?
It's my first podcast outside of Beauties and Beasties. It's my first recorded one.
Oh my God!
It's my first one in America. It's my first everything, and possibly after this will be last.
It could be your last. Yeah. So I noticed for the occasion, Gabe, you have a shirt with a collar on it. What is going on over there?
Right. Usually it would be a hoodie.
Yeah.
It just I felt like stepping it up. No, actually, my wife had a birthday today, so we were out doing some brunch. So.
Okay. Gotcha. So what inspired this today was last week on Beauties and Beasties. I feel like I'm doing a recap like it's a follow.
Yeah.
Last week there was a discussion. Marcus Scruggs was on with the boys there, and they were talking about pay, technician pay, and where it ranks against other industries, and some of the factors that go into what sets pay for people and what sets pricing. And those things, to me, are inextricably linked. And I think there was a little bit of a conversation about that, and I thought this would be a great thing to sort of go in deeper. And Sean, if you want, kind of give us, I know Marcus's position was saying, hey, HVAC guys make more, plumbing guys, electricians, pest control technicians aren't paid enough. And then you had a position on that. Do you remember what your take was there?
Yeah. Before we start, I want to stress this is really important. Like I've brought this up with Andy, and I want to stress it again. Yep. I don't want any of the American guys thinking that I am representative of our industry. I'm their mouthpiece. I'm not. I don't want anyone thinking that I'm a business guru. I'm intended to be what I'm not. My experiences are like a study case of one of mine. So like if you disagree with us, that's fine. I'm just going to tell you what I saw from being an employer and my thoughts, and an employee and my thoughts. But yeah, I think it's probably one of the most important conversations we can have, because it is the lifeblood of every pest control business and the happiness around everybody involved. And I know Marcus's was like, we need to pay people more, we need to look after them better. And that's exactly where I was when I was an employee. And a little aside to that, when I first set this business off, my first person I set it up with was my dad. And my dad was effectively the employee, in that he would go out and do the work, and I was the guy running the thing behind the scenes. So I got to see the good and bad of all of it. I'm trying to think of how to get into this without it, because I don't want this to be confrontational or like sort of antagonistic. But it's a conversation that employers, business owners stay away from, because they are absolutely petrified of upsetting their employees and thinking that they're like pissing up the back and telling them they're raining, aren't they? But if we aren't honest with them, then so we as an employer, you end up burying your head in the sand to a degree and not telling them, because it causes you a shit ton of issues, if you do. But it is a conversation we need to have. And my take on all of this is, if you're an employee and you think you're worth a lot more than you're being paid, then ask yourself why. Why am I worth more? But look deep down and ask yourself more. And I say it quite quite openly because I was that person. I'm not anymore, but I was. And here's the thing: Andy talks about cutting checks and all that, and I'll go through with you how I go through it with my lads, because I usually teach in terms of stories and analogies and stuff like that, because I find it easier. And I say, right, forget about employer for the minute. There's two guys, Sean and Andy, and they work at the same pest control firm. And they are both fucking good operators, pair of them. You know, they both go out, they both do well. And I'm going to make me the hero of the story here, Andy.
Yeah, that's good. I like it.
So Sean says to his son, do you know what it is? I'm going to do a bit more. And every month he takes a percentage of his wages and he puts them to one side and he starts buying his own stuff and he builds it and he builds it and he builds it. And his family go without holidays, you know, they go without stuff. And I'm not being an arse when I say this, because this is the reality of starting a business.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, after you've put all that time and effort in, and both of them have, they're both good operators. But then one of them says, listen, I'm going to give it a go on my own. So he has to leave the security of his job. He doesn't know if he can pay his mortgage, which is exactly where I was at. And I set my business up. I had enough to pay my mortgage for 3 months. I had 1,500 quid. And if it didn't work, I was done. You know? Yeah. No, and we did. We jumped at it and we went for it. And we dug deep. And then I ran a charity for the first few years because I had no idea about pricing. And then eventually I got it to being a not-for-profit organization. And then eventually we got it to be profitable. But in those years, you know, that technician who went out on his own, when Andy was starting work at 8 and finishing at 4 and being paid for every hour he did, I'd go home at 4 and I would answer the phone and I would write proposals and I would send things off. And then I would ring all their pest controllers. How do you join the MPTA? How do I do this? I need to do rams for this. I need to do rams for that. And it consumes your whole life, you know. And I'm not whinging about that. That's what I wanted to do. When you go and you do it and you put your time and your effort in, and then eventually it comes good after years, because this isn't a 3-4 week process. It's fucking years before you get there. And then you've got to take someone on and you don't know if you can afford to pay their wages because it's scary. You take someone on and eventually it works. And his wages are sitting on your head and, you know, and the pressure's on you, etc., etc. And I say, Andy, do you know what it is? You're a good operator. Do you want to come work for us? And he can see where you're going. And he says, yeah, I'm going to take a risk on you. So he comes and joins you. And then after 6 months, he goes, me and him's doing the same amount of work, but he's getting all the money. I think I deserve a share of them profits. But why? Like, what have you risked? And if you watch our podcast back, I say to my lads, it's dead fucking easy how to make money. It's dead easy. There's only 2 ways you can do it. You have a skill that nobody else has and you do that skill incredibly well. Or you risk your own money. That's it. That is literally it. It doesn't make it. You can be a welder, you can be a plumber, you can be an electrician, you can be whatever it is. If you do that skill bloody brilliantly and you invest your time and your effort in it, you'll be all right. You know? So I'm like, well, that's it. So why does he deserve a share of the profits? And I'm not saying he doesn't. For anybody who does that, the question I'm asking is why.
So in this scenario, the way to move forward for that technician in their pay level would be self-development, right? That's kind of what you're saying. You're like, improve your skill set, learn, take it on yourself to read books and seek out training and add certifications and that kind of thing, right?
So no, do you know what it is? I'm gonna flip it on its head because that's what everyone wants you to say. But if my lads go out and they get the ace or they get the field biologist, so put more money in the tank. Right. If it does, then great. But I always say to them, listen, like, you want more money? Put a business case together. And I don't want you to write a business plan. I just want you to come and tell us how we're going to make more money. So if they turn around and say, listen, we're getting these inquiries in for ants. I'm looking at ants in a big way at the minute. And you go, right, so what? And they go, well, actually, if we're doing nematodes and we'll set this up, we could contact them every spring. We could do this. We could book them in. We could use it to get into there. All right, yeah. That puts more money in the tank.
Yeah, and I think another aspect of, and maybe just the same thing said in a different way, I would just say, are you taking on responsibility for anything in the company?
Yeah.
Because most, especially an entry level, technician, they have, on a practical level, very little responsibility. Like if they completely botch their work, they quit or get fired and immediately get hired somewhere else at the exact same rate. They have no skin in the game. There's no risk for them. I mean, practically speaking. But if they're like, all of a sudden now I want to lead a team. And so that team's profitability, it's going to affect my profitability. All of a sudden I'm like, okay, let's talk about this, because now you're taking responsibility off of my plate and carrying the burden a little bit.
Yeah. The skin in the game thing is massive, massive. And I say this all the time. Like, for anybody who watches this podcast and thinks, do you know what it is? I'm going to go and do it myself. I'm going to be a chuck in a truck, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that. Whatever it is you decide to do. When you start, it's going to be dog shit. You're going to get it wrong. You're going to do jobs where you lose money, where you end up paying to do their pest control, where you miss holidays, where everything goes terribly wrong and you want to give up. But you have to have those days, because if you don't, later on when it gets hard, you'll give up. The thing that keeps you going when it's hard is the fact that you've invested so much of your time, hard work, blood, sweat and tears. So every time something goes wrong, you just think to yourself, well, I'm just banking up resilience so that I can get through the hard times when they come. And that's exactly what it is. And that's why, as a business owner, when someone comes to you and says, I've done 44 hours this week, I've been paid for 44 hours this week, but I think I deserve a little bit more. You're like, but do you? Like, and I'm not saying you don't. What I'm saying to you is, as an employee or an employer, you've got to look deep within yourself and say, do I? And then all of a sudden, if the answer is yes, I do, if you have done that, if you have put stuff to one side, the boss ain't going to get rid of you.
Right.
He's going to get it.
Yeah. So there's, that's like sort of the entrepreneurial spirit inside of a already operating organization, right? Like, you have people that are kind of taking initiative and advancing their careers inside of the organization versus just hey, I think I should just get paid more money just because I want more money.
Yeah. Because when I was at school, we did economics, and they said to me that the basic economic problem is resources are scarce and human wants are infinite. The guy who has a Mini today wants a BMW tomorrow. The lad who's paid $2,000 a month wants $2,500 a month the next month. It is absolutely the basic economic problem of everything. And if you think of it this way, from an employer's point of view, I want to pay my lads as much as I possibly can, because if they're good and they're worth it, it keeps them safe for me.
Yeah.
Yep. I've got a safe workforce, and it's that stress that comes off your head when you've got people who you can rely on. So Marcus made a very good point. He said, because I said, how do we get there together? And he said, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. How do we get there together? And as I said at the start, we don't have this conversation, and we don't ever have this conversation with them because it creates so much of a headache because everyone's an individual. And then you get people going, no, I just want more.
Now, to Marcus's contention, I did a little research, because he did make a claim that struck me as like, I really wanted to look into it, because he said, we don't make as much as plumbers. We don't make as much as, HVAC guys. We don't make as much as electricians. So I did some market research on rates for all those trades and compared to what, say, an average pest control technician is going to make as far as an operating ratio to revenue. It turns out that we're almost exactly the same, almost identical. So if you're any of the trades, if you're a pest control technician, if you're a plumber, if you're an electrician, you're HVAC, we all make almost the exact same percentage of revenue. Now, pest control technician may make a smaller dollar amount because the average job for, say, a plumber is going to be a lot higher than the average job for a pest control technician. He's doing a smaller ticket item, and so he only makes a percentage of whatever that ticket is. HVAC, you're installing a new furnace or air conditioner, and it's a $10,000 job. You make whatever your percentage off of that. You may make more dollars in the end of the year as an HVAC technician than you do a pest control because you're generating more dollars. So they're inextricably linked, the revenue of a pest control company and the pay we can do, and we aren't shorting pest control technicians on average as an industry compared to other trades. Now, I was interested to see, like, what are some of the highest ones. Law firm is 50%. If you're a lawyer, you make 50% of what your company revenue is in your pay. Healthcare is 41%. A doctor's office is 40% because you got, nurses and things in there as well. Marketing firms, 39%. Dentist office is 25 to 30%. A plumber makes 15 to 30. Electrician is 15 to 30. Driveway sealing, 15 to 30. Pest control, 15 to 30. It starts getting a little tough. Manufacturing, 12%. And retail, 8 to 15%. So those are probably the ones you want to stay away from down towards the bottom there.
But I think from an employer standpoint, as you go down the labor side, you go up the product cost side. And as you go all the way up to a law firm, your product cost is zero. It's all labor.
Yep.
And I would guess if you looked at the profit margins across all of them, they would be pretty similar.
So that's
from like a business standpoint.
Yeah, that's a good point, Gabe. And here's another aspect. To be a doctor or a lawyer, there's a lot of schooling, a lot of certification, a lot of licensing. You have to pass a bar exam to be a lawyer. You have to be licensed to be a doctor. Like
you have to take responsibility.
So to Sean's point, a doctor or a lawyer has a really unique skill set that they honed over a long period of time, and they can make a lot. If you are a pest control technician, and like Gabe's saying, you can, if it's at some companies that do, pretty commoditized low-level work, you could have somebody up and running in a week and have them out in their own truck spraying houses.
Yeah, but watch. I'll show you how this works, right? I'm going to give you, if anyone's watching this, keep it to yourself, because this is my next thing that I'm going to try. I was a lad who used to run around the woods, right? That's what I did. Like, I had dogs, I'd go hunting, shooting, fishing, all that sort of stuff. And I'm not too bad with a dog. I can get a tune out of one. So what I'm going to do is I'm getting a spaniel in July. In the process of catching some house mice now. I'm going to create a box that they're fed in with a small 25mm tube going in and out of it. So they've got to pass through the tube, and we'll get the dog to find the tube. You won't find mice, because finding mice is a waste of time. But all of a sudden, imagine you are a technician with a dog, and that could be rats or mice, but it finds rats or mice. It doesn't find the actual creatures. It finds where they're getting in. So you turn up to a pharmaceutical industry, you turn up to a cat, and it could be getting in anywhere underneath in the cladding or whatever it is. But you can walk around with your dog, and it indicates where they're going in. You can put a camera on. All of a sudden, what's that man worth with that dog?
Yeah.
And you know why he's worth it? Because there's fucking no one out there doing it.
Yeah. Unique skill set.
Yeah. You don't have to be a doctor or to be successful. What you've got to do is you've got to zone in on what you like doing. Then you've got to look for something that nobody else is doing. If you follow the crowd, you'll only get what the crowd get. And then you think to yourself, all right, okay, that I can do that. Yeah. And then just be brave enough to give it a go.
Yeah. So you're saying if you put in an average level of effort and do the average workday, you're going to get the average pay.
Absolutely.
You have no argument for like, hey, I'm not getting paid enough. You're just putting in the average here. Yeah. So there you are.
Yeah. If you were doing the average, how easy are you to replace?
Yeah.
There's thousands of them out there. If you were that man with that dog that has put something in, that all of a sudden that job will turn up where the boss turns around and goes, oh, we're getting an absolute headache. This job, this massive contract we've got with Coca-Cola or with whoever, it's doing my nut. And you go, I think I can solve it. It's Friday night, Sean. Tell them I'll be there first thing Saturday morning. Bingo.
Yep.
Bingo. and I said this on the podcast and I'll say it again. As an employer, I cannot make you brilliant. I can't make you do that. I can't make you learn. I can't make you absorb stuff. I can't make you interested in stuff. I can train you what I need you to do, but if that's what I do, you will only get what you get. Then if you want to drop a gear and kick on, then all of a sudden you're like, yeah.
I had a technician. So I give raises if they just get licensed. So I know, Sean, you were talking about make sure they can actually bring more value to the table. I say yes and amen to that. But part of my raise structure is just if you get the next license up, I give you a bump. And I had a technician just in the last 6 months, and we were going through, hey, how can I make more money? I said, get this license, you're going to get a $1.50 bump. And he came back and he was like, hey, like, I think I've been taking on a lot of responsibility. He's like, would you give me an additional bump? I think he wanted another $1 to get that license. I said, I'll tell you what, if you get the license by this date, it was like 2 months, 3 months out, plenty of time to train for it. I said, yeah, I'll honor that. I'll give you $2.50 bump for it. He didn't get the license by that date. Wow. It's like, okay, you can lead a horse to water and you can give all the opportunities to make money, but it's like if you don't have an individual who's driven and really wants it, then
so then now the question becomes to me, how do we get our pricing? How is our pricing linked with this? Like, how do we get our pricing higher so that we can pay these technicians more like a plumber or whatever, where we can get their average dollars in? And I think there was, Sean, you had one point that you had made about there's a deficit in just sort of business acumen, and sort of people are terrified to raise their prices and ask for what they're worth as a small business. They're just not wanting to go, hey, I'm going to demand this price. They try to race to the bottom.
I can talk you through this because, like, I've been through that journey with so many other small businesses at the same time as me, and everyone's on the same path. So again, if you're going to start off on your own, keep this to yourself because it's fucking gold dust. But I can tell you how nearly every business I've ever seen started, and alluded to it. You start in business and you put a price in, and you're probably going to be the cheapest in your area because you haven't got that much confidence in you or your ability. And also you haven't started investing a lot of money in there, so you don't truly know your worth.
Yeah.
And you start making some money, and in your head you think, oh, I'm making money. But you're not. And I say to people all the time, there's 3 types of business. There's a charity, not-for-profit, and a profit. A charity is one that is subsidized by someone else. Not-for-profit is it doesn't make a profit, it breaks even, and a profit is it makes a profit. So when you first start, and you speak to a one-man band and you say to them, you're profitable, and they go, yeah. And you go, yeah, you're definitely profitable, 100% profitable. Yeah, what profit did you do this year? And I'm going to make up some figures. He says, I've done 50 grand. And you go, all right, yeah. How much does it cost to take you out of the business? What? How much you got to pay a tech to do your job? And he's like, 50 grand. And you're like, so you're not for profit? And they're like, oh, with a PSO, wouldn't it? And you go, but hang on a second. Is that tech going to go home of an evening and answer the phone and do all the stuff and go out on a Saturday and all that? And he goes, no. So you're a charity? Like, total nightmare. And I say this to my lads all the time. The worst position you can find yourself in is when you're paying to do somebody else's pest control. And I know, because I've been there. You get something wrong, you've got to go back. And if you're paying wages on someone, all of a sudden you're like, oh my word, this has went terribly wrong. So and I started there. I was a charitable business. I put my time and effort in, because I wasn't charging every job like I was paying somebody else to do it. So how do you grow? And then all of a sudden you think, oh, and you hear other people and you put your prices up a bit and people take them and you're a bit shocked and you think, oh, wow. And then you put them up a bit more and you think, I'm starting to do all right now. then all of a sudden you get to a point where you could pay a technician, but there's no money for you.
Yep.
You know, so now you're a not-for-profit organization, and you realize, and you're like, but you make the jump, don't you? And you're like, I'm going to employ him, and I'll take the hit. You'll hear that all the time. Employed my first lad, I knew I was going to take a hit.
Yeah.
I didn't know your figures, mates. But he does it, and then all of a sudden realizes he's got to charge a bit more, and he starts turning a profit. And it's that journey that goes from charitable business through to not-for-profit, through to profitable business. And then you're sitting there going, all right, yeah, I've got the hang of it. But then what you realize is it's very easy to make a wage, and it's very difficult to make a profit in it. You know, there's a whole different sort of mindset you've got to get on to get there.
Yeah.
So that's how I see it.
There's this sort of analogy or a sort of analogous process when you have the employee that we just talked about that comes in, does the average work, whatever, and he's supposed to kind of go up that ladder and learn how to do things that are more valuable. It's the exact same path for a company. You start out at this, and you're just kind of doing the average. What's the competition doing? Okay, I'll just do that, and you get to the point where you're subsistence, right? You just make enough just to keep alive, and then you got to find ways to. And I think this is where a lot of companies kind of get stuck. They don't. In the single employee, we call it like adding a skill or adding, like you're saying, adding some unique ability that can earn them more money. For a company, it's your differentiation. What you have to learn and put work into what makes your company be that little bit different than all the other competition to make it more valuable so that you can command that extra money. And that's where a lot of companies hit that little ceiling, and they're pretty much average. They're pretty much like everybody else, and they don't really know how to go and be like, hey, I'm going to develop this unique little service that I can do that's different than everybody. I mean, Sean, you have some great ideas, and that's what you have to do to get to that next level.
The thing is, again, for the Americans listening to this and me, what I would like to stress is we are totally different in that we don't have licensing. Mm-hmm. And when we hear what yous are capable of charging in terms of what we are, like, I know that we have to work hard. Every pound's a prisoner, every penny's a prisoner, you know, like we don't have that. Like when Gabe was saying about like getting field biology, so your next step up and all that, like it doesn't quite work like that in the UK because we don't have licensing. Literally, you can start tomorrow and be a professional. Yeah. No training, no nothing. You start tomorrow.
Yeah. So okay, so that goes right into one of the thoughts that I had as I was preparing for this. One of my key points that I think is a driver of our pricing here is regulation in general. Yeah. Because when I look at in the UK, it's more strict on pesticides and more strict on your equipment, and you guys don't have the options to do the sort of cheap, easy, dangerous stuff that we can do, right? And it should drive our pricing down. But we have a regulatory burden over the top of us. We have licensing and business registration and, you know, all these sorts of things that sort of create this little bubble around our industry and raise our price and our value. And I would almost say, because you guys touched on this was the next topic. Marcus had asked you guys, what do you think about regulation? What do you think is going to happen in the future? And we all kind of, as an industry, worldwide, I think we tend to recoil on regulation. When I look at that, I go, well, really, why does the plumber make more? He makes more because he has to live up to a code that he's going to get inspected by the codes enforcement. I don't know what you guys call it there. Electrician is going to have people come in behind his work, a government agency, and inspect it and say, this either passes or fails. Either you got to redo the whole thing or, you know, we're not going to allow you to occupy this building or whatever. We don't have quite that. But if we did, the risks to the client would be that much higher and our price would skyrocket. If we had a government agency, if our regulatory agencies here in New York, it's the Department of Environmental Conservation, if they were going behind your work and randomly sampling and inspecting your work and saying, how many stations did you use? Did you set these up right? Did you follow the label? Did you do everything right? then the onus on that pest control company and technician is going to be really high to do it the right way. And right now we still don't have that. We do have licensing, which makes us a little exclusive and means we can command a little higher average average price than you guys can in the UK. But I think, boy, if you had somebody that was a codes enforcement style thing, our price would skyrocket. It'd be that much more.
We kind of do. I would say we kind of do, and we don't. You can start off tomorrow and be a pest control and be like bottom of the run. Would I like to see licensing? Yeah. Why? Because I absolutely guarantee your prices go up, because it's a barrier to entry for that one-man band. He's now got to find the money to pay for the license to get him to where he wants to be, and he's got to find it continuously. We could afford to pay it now.
Yep.
So I'm like, fucking sign me up, we'll have licensing. If it gets rid of me competition, I'll have that in the blink of an eye. But I know, and we all know in this country, that the money in a lot of jobs is when they do when you get audited sites, whether that's SALSA, BRC, whatever it is. And that's exactly what's happening. They're sending someone in to check your work.
Yep.
And with that headache comes the extra money, because these firms know they have to get this right. So they're willing to pay someone to check your work. So they're willing to pay to get the work done to the degree that they want. Whereas the lady with a wasp nest in her house doesn't care, and it's all to do with the value attached to the job. And no job. Another one I say to our lads all the time when I'm telling them to look out for work, I say there's 3 wasp nests. One's in a farmer's hedge at the bottom of his field, for however many fields away. One's in the gutter line of a person's house, and the other one's over the entrance door to a hospital. It's exactly the same treatment.
Yep.
What's the first one worth to you? 0. That farmer ain't killing that wasp nest. He don't care what I order.
Yep.
The lady who has them in her house, she's going to give you $100. I'm talking American, $100. Yeah. The hospital that needs to have it done at 3 o'clock in the morning when it's shut, and it needs to know that it's being done and nobody's going to get stung, is going to give you $400. It's the same job. So you in order to get that level of work, you have to tune in to the people who have, and I say all the time, you've got to look, and it sounds a bit sort of brutal this, but it's true. You have to look for people and businesses who are in that pain point. Because if they're not in the pain point, nobody gives their money away, and the more pain they're in, the higher they are willing to pay to get that problem solved. But the higher the level you go to, the higher you have to behave, and you often have to show a lot more authority in that situation. So you have to show your insurance, you have to put your rams together, you have to do this, you have to do that. So when people go, I can't be bothered with that paperwork, I'm like, you're a dickhead, because that's where the money is. The money's in your paperwork and not in your hard work.
Yeah.
Like, we can all kill a wasp nest. Who cares?
Right.
Who cares? They are employing you to be a safe pair of hands. So, like, stop running around. When you turn up to a house to do a wasp nest, and it's a lovely house in a nice posh area, and the bloke's got an NHS, National Health Service badge on him, ask the question, what do you do? What do you do? Yep. Oh, yeah, well, I work in the hospital. Yeah, do you not get wasp nests there? I would do. All right. When's the tender up?
Yep.
Tenders then. All right, no bother. Don't just run in and dust it and disappear off. Look for those people who want that level, and they've got to hit it, because you're never going to get it off the farmer with a wasp nest in the bottom of his field. You're looking in the wrong place.
Yeah.
Go for it.
100%. That's part of the reason we moved to be just commercial. Like, that's where the your skills in integrated pest management and developing programs and reporting and that sort of high level performance is really valued, because honestly, Mrs. Smith at her house did not care about our high level capabilities with data analysis. She just is like, could you kill the ants or not? Like, yeah. And I don't care what you used. And you're like, but then you do, a public school, and you have to do everything just by the letter and document everything, single thing. And you're talking to the teachers union about the problem and whatever. That's where the highest dollars are. So I don't know if, as an industry, should we be scared of more regulatory pressure?
You want more? Do you know the one thing is I can't remember who said it, but someone said to us, they go on about the banks not wanting regulation. Someone said the banks love regulation. They love it. They eat it up because the big banks, when the regulation comes in, it means the little banks can't get a foothold and they don't have competitors.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like we are absolutely petrified every time we lose a product. Every time we get something gone from our toolkit that makes our life a little bit harder, I think, oh, Howie, come on. If it's gone and it gets harder, we can charge more money because we've got more skills.
Yeah.
We are slowly edging towards the point of having a skill that nobody else can do. You know, why can people kill wasp nests themselves? Because they can go down the local hardware store, they can buy a wasp nest destroyer aerosol can for 15 quid if they can see it, and they can go and give it a blast and run off. It's not hard.
Yep.
It's not, is it? We know it's not hard.
No.
You know, why can they not deal with a bed bug problem? Why are bed bugs expensive? Because they can't go down the hardware store and buy a 15 quid bed bug can and destroy it. Where's your money? Like, and I get the scales of you can do 100 wasp nests and all that. We're not talking about that in case you want to go down that route. You know, there's 100 ways to make money. What I'm saying is, the harder something gets, the more you can charge.
Yep. It's funny because I used to think that the availability of cheap, effective pesticides was the thing that kept pricing down. But it's really, to me now, it's really just like the regulatory side of it. It's the lack of regulation. That's the only thing that, like, when we're in commercial accounts, if they don't have any kind of oversight at all and there's no risk to them, they're going to pay a lot less than ones that have some kind of oversight. It's traditionally, like you're saying, it's been the auditing agencies that come in and they'll kind of enforce those, the SQFs and BRCs and alphabet soup of auditing agencies. But man, I would like to see it all around. Like, why do we have unlicensed people making applications? Why do we have people that are doing just the most terrible work and no one's ever checking on it? Like, we're the only ones that find it and go, geez. I had an experience at it was like a gas station sort of mini mart place that serves food and stuff. And I checked their stations before I went in. I was there to get gas and grab a sandwich, and they were terrible. The stations were just full of each one had a mouse nest in it. The light traps inside had all full of flies on the glue boards and everything. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is inspected by the health department. Should they not, how does this company get away with providing that level of service? Should that not be an infraction that we close this place down? Why is this allowed to happen? It's because we're lax on enforcement of a bunch of these things.
Yeah, but I'll change the narrative a little bit on this, because we do this as an industry all the time, and it's one of my fucking proper pet peeves. And I'll go back to my days before this. When I was a farrier, I used to put shoes on horses' feet. We only ever see their worst work. And it's that old price thing, isn't it? If that, you've got to keep the lights on and the wheels turn in your business. And a firm comes to you and he says, listen, I've got 10 garages. And you go, all right, no bother. And he goes, listen, I want to do $50 a visit, $100 a visit, whatever is cheap over your way. And you go, listen, we can do that, but the service you're going to get is going to be pretty atrocious. And he's like, I just need the paperwork. Right, okay, no bother. Or he starts off great and then they start missing bills, so you stop turning up. And then someone comes in and goes, this is terrible, this pest control is terrible. And you're like, he hasn't been paid for 3 months, and stop coming. Like, you only ever see someone's worst work. Because in our head, we think, if that was our job and that service station looked like that, it would probably be our fault, because we don't really have service stations like that. But you just don't know what's going on behind the scenes. So I just think, when I look at it, I just think, I don't look at them jobs and think, we need to get in here and get that work off them. Maybe that's me not being a great businessman. I look at that and think, if we go into this job, we need to make absolutely doubly sure that this person pays his bills on time, he's going to do what he's told, etc., etc. Because how many jobs have you had where the client does not do what he's told to do?
Okay, let me counter this. Because I'm not a big fan of the station shaming, I call it. too. Like you open up somebody's station.
Oh, I love it. It's
Take
so
a picture. Yeah.
Go on, Gabe. Go on.
Take a picture of it. Like I'm not a big fan of that because there are all those things. Like you may be looking at something where that hasn't been serviced in years, right? That station was left behind and abandoned. It hasn't been serviced, and you look at it and you're like, this company sucks. What I'm thinking is, we're allowing that facility to continue to operate when there's substandard pest control happening. I'm not blaming the pest control company. I'm blaming the site and then the regulators for not calling that out. Now, if that pest control company comes in and says, okay, I'll do it for whatever, and that is a ridiculous low rate that you can't possibly do it. Like if you went to your doctor and said, I don't want all the antibiotics, could you just give me like 2 pills? They would be bad to give you that and be like, sure, yeah, here's take 2 and you'll probably still have this infection, good luck. We don't let them do that. So there's sort of a minimums that we have to do and we can't, and none of us should be able to go below that, and we should be sort of checking on that. Our regulations here, even though we have licensing and everything, they don't really check on that side of it. No one's looking at, are you doing a good job? They're just looking, are you compliant? Do you have the pesticides? Do you have the labels? Are you reporting your usage properly? Did you pay your licensing fee and get your CEU credits? Like that's all you really are having to do.
We don't have any of that. No.
Yeah, you don't even have that. It's a Wild West over there. Oh my God. So, but yeah, so I'm kind of on the regulators that, you should be harder on these companies to say, hey, you have to have proper pest control. And if you don't, if you're skimping out and not paying enough, you're going to be paying fines. You're going to get shut down. And then it solves itself. It's not on us to like, oh, I'm going to take that for $20 a month and not really do anything because that's all they'll pay. They're going to be willing to pay the more. And
that goes back to that thing though, doesn't it? Then they're in that pain point. And when you can stop that pain point, if we don't get this right, we lose our income for the next 3 months because we get shut down. All of a sudden, it's like, I want to charge you not $100, $1,000. And they're like, well, actually, get this wrong. It's going to cost us $100,000 in revenue. Yeah. Your $1,000 is absolutely money well spent, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing where it sort of snowballs. If you are regulating things more strictly like that, it provides more money to those jobs because the risks are higher, like you're saying. At the same time, now you can command a better price for that. And now we can invest in all of those super cool digital remote monitoring and new techniques and new materials. And like the money now is in the industry to be able to eliminate rodenticide use, eliminate pesticide use almost completely and move to a better IPM-based program for people because the money's there. But until the risk is seen as being important enough to warrant that, it's going to languish. And that's what we've seen for 10 years now. Electronic rodent monitoring's been on the horizon. It's always on the horizon. We're going to get there. We're going to get there. And everyone's like, yeah, we're kind of getting there, but it's still super expensive and not quite practical, and we don't really have it put together yet. And I think that's how we get there is harder regulations on those sites, more licensing requirements, and maybe even, some sort of minimum standards of like, here's best practices, maybe from your national associations. If you're not following best practices, you're in violation now.
You've been listening to Coast with Andy, can't pronounce his last name, and Gabe Seymour. Join me, Pete Chopin, probably in another 5 years from now when they invite me on again.